A very warm welcome to the LBC 97.3 Book Club with me, Iain Dale. Tonight, I have a very famous author with me, though he's not famed for his books, necessarily. He's famed for his business acumen. You will all know him from the TV series Dragon's Den. Welcome, James Caan.
Hi, how are you, Iain?
Well, I'm very well. Thank you for coming on. And it's a magnificent cover you've got on this book that you've written.
Thank you.
Start your business in 7 days. Any business I've started has taken several months. It's quite an achievement to do it in 7 days.
I think what it is, Iain, I've basically combined the experience of 4 years on Dragon's Den, where I saw literally over 1,000 presentations and pitches, and I currently run just over 40 companies today. And if you can imagine, when you combine that amount of experience, it's kind of given me the ability to focus, because a lot of people used to say to me, how can you make a decision in 20 minutes on Dragon's Den?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is, if you understand the kind of journey and the mechanism of how to make a decision, is this business viable? Should I really do this? And what I'm trying to do is kind of help people out there who've got a business idea, who've got a business, to say, is this something that's going to work? And really the book is about defining that journey and helping them make that decision to say, this is something, is a must, I should do it, or actually this is more like a hobby, it's never going to be a business.
Because you ask a lot of questions in the book, which anybody that's looking to set up a business, they've kind of got to answer yes, or otherwise it's not worth going for. You've got to be so committed, haven't you? It's
Absolutely.
I mean, you made me feel guilty at one bit in there where I said, you can't be a part-time entrepreneur. And of course, I'm here 5 nights a week doing my radio show, and during the day, I run a couple of businesses. But you think you've actually got to give your all just to the single business and be completely single-minded?
Well, it's a great question, and I think, and that's what the book's really about, because what the book is saying to that question is, you're never going to build scale. It's never going to be a huge business. It's going to be a lifestyle. And what I say there is, if it's a lifestyle that you want, that's perfectly okay. But don't confuse a business which is a lifestyle and convince yourself it's going to be a huge empire, because it probably won't. What I'm saying in there, people who you meet in life that are genuinely, remarkably successful, very rarely do it part-time.
What do you think makes an entrepreneur? Because to my mind, there are two sorts of people who run businesses. There are people who run a business because somehow it's a subject matter that they're interested in. I run a publishing business. I love books. I love politics. So I run a political publishing business. Now, other people will think, well, I don't need to be interested in the subject matter of the business. I just want to run a business as a business. So I can produce a widget, even if I don't care what the widget is. I can see a market for that widget, and I'm going to market it all over the world and make millions of pounds that way.
I wouldn't back that person. I wouldn't. I think if you're going to be successful, you have to live and breathe and be passionate about what you do. If you look at Steve Jobs, you know, when Steve stood up and he used to talk about Apple, did you see the passion, the drive, the belief? I mean, it was his baby. Surprisingly, he runs one of the world's most successful businesses. So I think just to come up with an idea of a widget, of something you don't really believe in, it's not your passion, is that something you can really create a huge business out of? As an investor, I wouldn't back that business. I'd want to see the person sitting in front of me absolutely passionate about that. That was their creation, it was their idea, it's something that they had created. Because to me, widgets themselves do not build big businesses. Publishing businesses do not go to the market on their own. Businesses are built and created through the passion of an individual who absolutely believes in it. And to me, that's what I look for if I'm investing in somebody.
You relate an anecdote about a lady who, I think she came on Dragon's Den, who had created a dog treadmill, which, I mean, you just read it and you think, what a ridiculous idea. But you backed her because of her,
yes,
rather than the idea. Just take us through how that worked.
It's a great example, because I passionately believe that business is about people. So when I'm helping somebody crystallize a vision for a business, to me it's all about the person. And when Sammy came on the show, I said to Sammy, tell me about you, Sammy. What is it about you that you think that I would invest? Because, you know, to put it bluntly, you know, fat dogs out there with treadmills, I'm not quite sure is where I'm at.
Plenty of fat dogs out there.
So she said, look, James, let me tell you a bit about me. She said, I come from a middle-class family. I essentially, you know, had a great education, private school, got married. I've got 3 kids, got divorced now. live in a council flat. During the day, I work as a waitress in a restaurant, and in the evening, I'm kind of selling these machines because one of my daughters is really bright. She's incredible, and I really want to send her to private school, but I don't have the cash, so I want to be in business. I happen to love animals, I love dogs, and I really passionately believe that you can rehabilitate animals and dogs, specifically who've been unwell, and rather than taking them for a walk 4 times a day, give them a treadmill. So it's a mechanism that eases the rehabilitation process. I really bought into her because I could see her passion, because success in her business meant her child would get the education that she passionately felt committed to. So the issue wasn't about the treadmill, it was what is it that's driving the woman to succeed. And I felt she had a genuine need for success. The product was something that she had invented. She'd had dogs all of her life, and she'd seen how when dogs, have an accident, etc. And interesting enough, when she came into the den and I invested in her, that year she sold 25 machines. Within the first year of being an investor in her business, we sold 493 machines.
They weren't cheap, were they?
We were buying them,
I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were buying them at 350 and selling them at £1,700.
That's a good markup.
Very good, very healthy margin. We like that.
Yes, you don't get that in publishing. and she's still going?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, we're now selling them in America, Sweden, Ireland. Literally, we're selling them by the container loads.
Can you learn to be an entrepreneur, or is it something that's sort of in your DNA?
Well, I mean, I think if I take Sammy as an example, I don't think Sammy was a natural entrepreneur. I mean, she'd never been in business before. She'd never thought of herself as a businesswoman. But I think what happens is you come across something that you feel passionate about, or you have an idea that you think, this could be really big. And I think it's that drive and that passion for making a difference, creating something, building something. And I think the book is all about showing you how you do that. So the book is very about how. When you read the book, it kind of takes you on a journey. It's like being on a train. And what I say is at each time you get to a station, you reevaluate and saying, is this right? Will this work? And if the answer is it's not, you should get off the train. Because
the problem is, as I know, I've started, 7 or 8 businesses in my life. And there are all sorts of different skills that you have to have. You have to know a bit about money. You have to know about accounts. You have to know about managing people. You have to know about marketing. Because in the beginning, it is just you. And there are very few people that have all of those skills.
I agree. And I think what I say in the book is if you come across those issues where you have to do something that you're naturally not good at, then you need to find somebody who is. Because even, a lot of people think I'm financially very literate. I left school at 16. I have no degree. I've never been an accountant. I'm not a banker. Yet I understand numbers because I've surrounded myself with people who do. So I think when I meet entrepreneurs, very often I meet somebody who says, I've got this great idea, and let me introduce you to Brian. He's my partner. He's great at financial. Let me meet you, Julie. Julie's coming on board because she's great at marketing. And essentially, they've divided the company into, a third each. So I think when you're in a situation where you feel that a particular component is important, what I say in the book is maybe you should find or bring somebody on board who complements your strengths with some of those skills.
But that can be quite difficult, can't it? Because if you're giving away equity, and then you fall out 2 or 3 years down the line. I mean, I remember a caller on Monday on our legal hour that we do, where somebody, they'd got a third of the shares in the company, 2 other people had got a third each, and the other 2 were ganging up, and we hear this so often, people who go in with the best of intentions and then either don't know how to extricate themselves or they don't want to extricate themselves, but they've fallen out with their business partners. Now, I mean, it's difficult to give someone advice on that because in the end there's got to be an element of trust, hasn't there?
Yes and no. I mean, I have just over 40 companies now. Every deal I do when I enter a business, I need to understand how I get out. So I believe you can do it. It's like a prenup. So to me, when I invest, I want to know at that point of saying, what happens if we fall out? So every situation, every investment I make, I have an open discussion with the partner and say, in the event we fall out, how should we deal with this situation? What should be the mechanism? In 30 years of business, I've actually never had a problem on extricating myself simply because I pre-discussed it in advance, like a prenup. You know, if something goes wrong, how will we work this out?
What are the most common mistakes that people make when they think they've had the most wonderful business idea ever, they want to go ahead? What's the most common mistake that they then make?
I think they sometimes over-engineer the idea. They think the market wants more than they're prepared to pay, so you over-engineer it, and by over-engineering, you make it too expensive, and therefore you can never sell enough volume. In business, it is volume that makes money. What happens is most entrepreneurs overdevelop something, they overcomplicate it, and therefore it becomes too expensive to make, and the market won't pay the price. Or I think they don't do enough research. They don't understand the market well enough. They don't understand the pricing well enough. They don't understand the logistics, the manufacturing, the process, etc. So when you make that mistake, it's because you've tried to cut too many corners. Unfortunately, in business, you cannot cut corners. You have to go through the process meticulously well.
And I guess another mistake that people make is they overestimate their likely sales and underestimate their costs, particularly often their overhead costs.
They do. And I think what I've always found is that the biggest mistake they make is people go too far with an idea without testing the market. So what I say to almost every entrepreneur I meet is before you over-engineer it, before you overly invest in it, go and talk to potential customers. Because if nobody wants to buy it, it doesn't really matter. It'll never work. So, come up with a concept, come up with an idea, and as quick as you can, go and talk to potential customers and say, if I could deliver you this, if I could make this at this price, is this something you would buy? Because if the answer's no, you shouldn't be doing it anyway.
I've had lots of ideas of DVDs that I'd like to do, and I'm thinking, yeah, well, I would buy them, but maybe I'm not the best example of the likely market that
And
I'm
I think the other
at.
point is really, really important is when I say go and test the market, I don't mean with family and friends, because they have a tendency to tell you what you want to hear.
Exactly. We're talking to James Caan, the author of Start Your Business in 7 Days. It's published by Portfolio, part of Penguin, $12.99 in paperback. Much more from James in just a second. This is LBC 97.3.
97.3.
You're listening to the LBC 97.3 Book Club with me, Iain Dale. James Caan is with me, the author of Start Your Business in 7 Days. Why do you think, James, that we find business failures such a social stigma in this country? If you've had a business failure, you're almost made to feel like a social outcast, whereas in America, it's a kind of rite of passage, isn't it?
It's a really good point, Ian. I think that here, because I think we don't teach people, we don't train people to understand that failure is part of the journey of success, that to become successful, it is inevitable you will make some mistakes. Even if I look at myself, I recently invested in a business where I lost £2.6 million, a huge amount of money for me. And, to me, I didn't feel like I'd failed. It was one that went wrong. But it doesn't mean that I'm a failure or I don't know what I'm doing, because we can all make mistakes. If you're looking at an artist who makes a song, do all their records make number one? Of course they don't. They have records that sell nothing and they lose money. If you look at directors who make movies, do every one of their movies make it? No, they lose money on a movie. So I think, to me, I take failure as part of the process of becoming successful. So
because you learn from failure.
Absolutely, you learn more from a failure than you do from a success. So to me, the biggest message that I could share is, if you are an entrepreneur and something goes wrong, just recognise it is part of the process. You should not look at that and saying, that means I'm not an entrepreneur. What that means is that idea itself probably wasn't your best idea. And I believe as entrepreneurs, your first idea doesn't have to be your best idea.
Do you think we need to have more business-related lessons in schools? I mean, I think there is more now than when I went to school. But I wonder if people emerge from school at 16 or 18 really with enough knowledge about how business works.
I think there's absolutely no question to me that this is a subject. The more we develop, the more we encourage. Because remember, entrepreneurship and business, we become the job creators of society. Around the world today, the biggest challenge we are experiencing globally is the lack of jobs. We're seeing unemployment at levels we've never seen before. And if we don't encourage people to start businesses, to start enterprise, where will these jobs come from? Today we have over 1 million people under the age of 24 out of work. How do those people get into work if businesses are not started? Because we can't just rely just on government to keep employing people. So I think anything we can do from an educational perspective to encourage business has to be a good thing.
It's interesting you quote that statistic about youth unemployment, but if you look at that 1 million people and think, well, if only 50,000 of them had a business idea and could actually get into business in some way, they would then employ other people, and that's the way we're probably going to get out of this mess, where it's the small and medium-sized enterprises that are actually going to help us do it. But of course, most of them will say, well, okay, I've got this great idea, I can even write a business plan, but where do I get the money from? How do I actually get the capital that I need to start this business? Because the banks aren't going to lend it to me.
Well, you say that. I mean, I work with Vince Cable, and we got a kind of a forum with the banks, and I have met with the banks every 3 months for the last year. On an actual factual basis, the banks over the last 12 months, on average, have been lending just over £2.1 billion per month to the SME community. The government have given £1.6 billion in loan guarantee schemes. So this is where an entrepreneur's gone to the bank with a business plan, look for a loan. The bank have said it's not one for us because there's no security. However, we're going to apply to the government loan guarantee scheme and ask the government to guarantee the loan. And they've released £1.6 billion. So I would beg to differ that actually I think the banks are lending. What I found is good business ideas and good plans always end up finding money. So when you say they're not lending, it's people that probably have not had a decent business plan that have gone to the bank, who didn't get the loan and think the banks are not lending. But when you talk to people who actually have got great ideas, they are getting funding.
But in the same way that they were 4 or 5 years ago, or not? Because I think that the amount that the banks are actually lending to these types of businesses has gone down.
I think the overall lending is definitely lower now than, because remember, in 2007 or 2006, the banks were frankly lending too much money. They were providing far too much capital, and they lost a huge amount of money. So I think now they're probably backing more smarter ideas, because remember, when banks lend recklessly, we blame them for being reckless. I think they're probably being more prudent today because they shouldn't really be backing businesses that are not viable.
So you've got banks. Not everyone can get on Dragon's Den, or sort of. I mean, I don't know if there are other programs like that. But if you can't get the money from a bank and you don't have access to so-called business angels, where else can you go?
I would say that for young entrepreneurs, probably the biggest area that entrepreneurs, I think, end up raising capital is the bank that's called the Bank of Family and Friends. Virtually most young people I meet, when they start off, they've generally ended up getting, some support, whether it's family or friends or contacts. It's always the best place to start, because those people know you better than anybody else, and they may see something in you that a cold venture capitalist or investor may not see on the back of an hour presentation.
I found a website the other day which I thought was quite interesting. I don't know if you've seen it, called Crowdcube, which is effectively Dragon's Den online, where people upload their business plans, they say what money they need, and then if you've got money, you can then effectively invest in a I mean, I'm not sure it's quite that simple, but certainly in the company that I was looking at, they've got a target. You've got your sort of thermometer gauge on. They wanted £350,000, can you believe? But they'd already got to 41,000 when I looked at it, and I thought, what an interesting website. And it's clearly, I guess, wisdom of crowds, isn't it?
Well, I think what that tells me, again, if it is a good business plan, if it is credible, it's financially viable, and you can demonstrate as an entrepreneur how an investor is going to make a return, that if he invests 350,000, the question is, how will he make a return? And if you can show him that he will make a fair return on his investment, the chances are you will get the capital. Because there are people out there with money, there are people, high net worth individuals, who do invest in businesses. on Dragon's Den, we're not just the 5 people who do this. There are hundreds of people across the country who've sold businesses, made a lot of capital, who actually need to deploy it. They're looking for those good business ideas. I think the entrepreneurial market is just not mature and developed enough in presenting ideas that make sense.
You tell some fantastic stories in the book about being approached by people completely randomly. I particularly like the one on the motorway.
Oh, Ian, it was absolutely hilarious. I'm on my way to Manchester. I'm driving down the motorway, and we hit a traffic jam. And I'm sitting in the car with my wife. We're having this conversation. All of a sudden, remember, this is the motorway. And somebody knocks on my door, and I'm like freaked out because I'm thinking, maybe it's the police. I look around. There's a guy with an envelope. Anyway, so I pull the window down because I'm a bit nervous because I don't understand why somebody's stopping me on the motorway. And he said, "You're James Caan, aren't you?" And I looked at him and I thought, okay. He said, "Yes, I am." He said, "James, you cannot believe," he said, "I've been looking to meet you for ages. I carry around with my business plan with the hope that one day you and I are going to meet." He said, "I'm on the motorway, I'm looking in my mirror, I can see your car and I recognise your number plate." And I thought, it has to be him. So I was praying we're going to come to a traffic jam somewhere, give me the opportunity to stop. And can I please leave you this? And I'm thinking, he can't believe, he cannot be serious. You cannot be telling me on a motorway I'm going to be handed a business plan. And do you know what was really interesting? It probably wasn't a bad idea, but out of principle, I'm not going to invest on the motorway. There's got to be a limit somewhere.
I would think to myself, maybe this is an omen. But does this happen very often?
Sometimes I come out of my office, I get to the car, and there's a business plan on my windscreen where somebody's put it on the window. I have situations where I could be in a hotel, and this is a true story. I was in a hotel, I was in the toilets, I'm standing in front of the urinal. Guy next to me says, "You're that guy from Dragon's Den, aren't you?" So I said,
I hope he was looking at your face, that's how he recognised you.
I'm thinking there must be a time and a place for a pitch. This definitely isn't one of them. I mean, literally, whether it's restaurants, in the street...
You've got to take your chance, haven't you? And in a way, you've got to admire people that have the balls to do that.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I genuinely... I'm very polite to them because I do understand it. It's difficult for them because, they've built up the courage or they've got an idea and they're passionate about it. And if they've found the initiative to somehow approach you in that way, the problem is, as you can imagine, I can't invest in everything I see. My website gets nearly 400,000 hits a month. I get literally thousands of ideas. It's really hard to find the gem in those ideas that I would back.
And if someone has got what they think is a really good idea to put to you, what is the official process of doing it?
I mean, what they should absolutely do is go to my website, which is jamescaan.co.uk. I have a section on the site that actually looks for business ideas, looks for business plans. You should send a plan in there. Don't always expect a response because we do get literally thousands. But if there's something that comes across our desk that we genuinely think is of interest, we'd always look at it. The area that I'm most passionate about, that I'm investing a lot of money at the moment, is in the recruitment industry. The recruitment market is something I'm really familiar with. It's a business I've been in, and I'm always happy to back recruitment entrepreneurs or existing recruitment businesses that want to grow, they want to expand, and they need capital to build, or somebody who's really passionate about building their own recruitment business.
We'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes' time. You're listening to the LBC 97.3 Book Club. James Caan is with me. He's written a book called Start Your Business in 7 Days. Turn your business idea into a life-changing success. It's published by Penguin in paperback at $12.99. This is LBC 97.3. And it's 9:30 with the latest news headlines. Here's Eleanor Noak.
LBC 97.3. Call 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is London's biggest conversation with Iain Dale.
And with me on the LBC 97.3 Book Club this hour is James Caan, whose book is called Start Your Business in 7 Days. Now, James, we were talking a little bit about your passion for recruitment before the news. I'm not sure I could get passionate about recruitment. Why are you so interested in it?
For me, it's an industry that I love. It's an industry that I've been in for many years. the company that I founded, Alexander Mann, today has grown to be probably Britain's most successful business in the kind of outsourcing area, with revenues now touching nearly £400 million a year, which kind of goes to show you an idea that I had where I literally set up a business in a room the size of a broom cupboard today that's become such a huge global business. So, I think it's a business where you're identifying talented people, for clients. So a client has a need where they need to find a specific individual. And I love that kind of whole chase of finding the right individual and then talking to the individual, convincing them it's the right opportunity, going back to the client. It's very people dominated. And I've always been really happy in people-based businesses. And if you're good at it, you can build a huge business. The other company that I formed, Humana International, I came up with an idea. I wanted to internationalize the idea. And when I started Humana, we had one office in London. And by the time we sold the company, we had 147 offices in 30 countries. So it definitely is a business you can create scale in. It's very easy to start a recruitment business. It's a low barrier to entry. So, if you've got an idea in a market that you're really passionate about and you feel it's time for you to maybe go out on your own and start your own business, you're definitely the kind of person I would back.
What are the challenges of expansion? Because I suspect that some people are very comfortable running a business, maybe with couple of dozen employees, reached a certain turnover level, but then they get outside their comfort zone. They don't feel that they have the ability to manage budgets in 6 or 7 figures. What advice can you give people who are successful, but maybe a bit apprehensive about going to the next level?
I think we all go through that phase. I think even when I was starting a business, you get the business to a certain size and then you get a little bit daunted by, oh my God, am I ready now to take that next leap? The issue for me at that point really is about attracting the right people, because businesses are grown and run based on people. And I think if you're ready to take that next level, what you need to do is attract somebody that you can bring on board who's been there and done that before, so that you don't make all the same mistakes. And if it's about hiring the finance director or a sales director, but if the business is at that stage and you financially have got the money to do it, I would strongly recommend that you bring somebody on board and you strengthen your management team to give you that confidence to make that decision.
And I speak from personal experience here, learn the art of delegation, because
absolutely,
if you started a business effectively on your own, maybe you've got 1 or 2 people, and you've been spending several years effectively doing everything, it's actually quite difficult to learn to let go, isn't it?
It is, and I think a lot of people struggle with it. My view is, I'm not sure you have a choice, because if you can't delegate, you are restricted to where that business will ever go to. If you're not in a position to share the responsibility with talented people that you've identified, you will always be a boutique. So I think delegation is not a nice to have, it's a critical step in the development of the business.
How did you start out?
I had an idea where I wanted to build my own recruitment business. I used to work in a recruitment business, and I suppose like a lot of people thought, I think I could do this better. So I came up with a name, Alexander Mann, made up a name, took a tiny office in Pall Mall, literally got the yellow pages and you just called companies and said, I've got an executive search business. I'm a headhunter. I believe I can find you the best talent on the market. Found a client who's prepared to use me, made my first placement, and literally grew that business to over 100 million in sales. And it was, I suppose, it was having that passion of being the best. It was the passion of recognizing that quality and service is paramount in a service business. I think the key driver of the success of Alexander Mann was the importance and the ability to attract the right talent for me in the business. A recruitment business is only as good as the people it employs, and I'm proud to say that we attracted some of the smartest talent in the industry.
It's interesting. Virtually every answer you've given so far, it concentrates on people. I totally agree with you. I think that if you've got the wrong people in your business, you're probably doomed to failure. But I'm not sure how many people really understand that.
And you're right, because for me, it begins, it starts, and it ends with the same theme. It's about people. Because when you think about it, you could have the best product in the market. Will it sell itself? You may have the best service in the market. The customers don't come to you. So unless you have people who have passion, who have drive, who have belief in you, who have belief in the business will never take off. So literally to this day, Ian, I spend all of my time, every day of my working life, my job is about finding talent of people who are going to join our business, because the success and failure of my business come down to the quality of people I have. To this day, I still personally meet every single employee who works in my organisation.
And how many do you employ?
800.
That's some commitment.
Mm-hmm.
I do the same, and I employ 20. I really wanted to get to, by asking you about how you started out. I know your father wanted you to go into the family business, didn't he? And that must have been quite a painful thing to decide to do, to say, well, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. And what happened there?
I mean, he was really, really passionate about having a son join because, I think in our culture, it's very normal, kind of Asian families where the parent wants the son to join the family business.
I come from a farming family. It's exactly the same. And I'm sitting here, not on the farm, as you'll see.
So, he absolutely believed that he would love me to join the business. But, manufacturing leather garments was just really not me. And I think my father was one of those people who said, it doesn't really matter about the product. You're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to be in business. And I said, actually, no, I think I need to believe in the product. I need to believe in what I do. And this is really not it. And I think my father was literally heartbroken because he believed that having his sons in the business would give the business kind of another lease of life. So when I didn't join the family business, him and I fell out really badly because I think he felt that I let him down. And it was interesting, him and I never spoke for 2 years. And then I started my own business. And it was only until Alexander Mann really became successful that I think he recognised that I probably made the right decision. But for years, I think he felt that I'd let him down. And I remember we were doing a big launch because at Humana we'd opened our 100th office. And he was there at the launch. And I was give him a presentation, and I had this huge map on the wall, and we had all these dots with all our offices around the country, and there was this huge, big dot, kind of a red dot, where we opened in Singapore. It was the 100th office, and I was giving a presentation. My father was in the audience, and I could see he had tears in his eyes, because I think he was so proud that he'd been so upset that I hadn't backed him, and yet I think he regretted that not giving me the encouragement or the support and helping me achieve the success, which when he died, I remember saying to him, what's your biggest regret in life? And he said, his biggest regret, that he was never part of my journey. And he said, looking back, if I just believed in you, then I could have felt like you got there because of me, but you got there in spite of me. So it's an interesting issue.
And families actually here are really important, because if you're starting up a new business, inevitably, it may not take 24 hours a day, but it can sometimes take 20 hours a day. And if you haven't got an understanding partner, if you haven't got understanding children, it can be a very difficult thing to do.
And a lonely
very
existence.
Lonely.
Yeah, no, I'm very fortunate that my wife and my children, absolutely 100% support what I do. And you're right, without the backing of your family and your wife and your children, it is quite lonely, because you are working very long hours. In my case, very often 7 days a week. And if they're not supporting you, you're constantly feeling guilty because you feel you're not there for them. But sometimes if you're on that journey and you're trying to create and build something, you have to give the commitment that it needs.
What about going into business with people in your own family? That's not always the best idea, is it?
Well, you say that. My first business, I backed my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, but certainly, was somebody that I was very fond of. So I actually started life in business with a partner. Today, I now have a daughter who works in the family business. I suppose it is it's much harder. You just have to be good with people, and I think you have to empathise with people. And I'm fortunate that I have good relationships. Virtually all the businesses that I own today, I have partners, I have shareholders, and, they are quite challenging relationships, because these relationships are not for a week or a month, but you can be in partnership with somebody for 5 or 10 years. So I think I've kind of developed the art of maintaining and building those relationships.
I don't know if you've been watching this series, I think it's on BBC Two, with Olga Polizzi, going around trying to rescue family businesses all around the country. But it's been absolutely fascinating to just watch the dynamics within the families. There was one in a bakery, there was one in a fancy dress shop in the middle of Essex. And there was always one member of the family that from the outside you could see that was the weak link, and they all knew that member of the family was a weak link, but none of them had the heart to tell them. And it was only when she came along that they actually managed to confront the issue.
That's very normal.
Yeah?
That's very normal, because because it's family, you don't want to upset anybody. It's a very delicate relationship. I've seen many, many family businesses where the dynamics, frankly, don't work, because you didn't get there because of merit. You got there because of family.
And it's very difficult also when, I don't know, maybe how your daughter feels, where she's in the family business, and yet you've got all of these other employees who think, well, has she got that position on merit?
In my case, she absolutely has a merit.
I'm sure, absolutely.
100%.
Just going back to recruitment, one of the things that I find most difficult is actually recruiting people. And I don't use recruitment consultants because I have to admit I've never had a very good experience with them. But you're essentially placing your trust in someone after meeting them maybe twice, maybe for half an hour or an hour. It's a bit like choosing a house. You spend all this money on something that you've only been in for maybe 20 minutes. You give some very good examples of interview questions in the book. What's the key to a successful interview?
I think, to me, is understanding what is that person going to do for you. So firstly, I think a lot of people have very, what I call, woolly job descriptions. So firstly, I would absolutely recommend that you understand what is the job you're trying to fill. What are the key drivers in that job? How are you going to measure success of that function? Then when you meet somebody, what you're trying to do is understand from them, how will they make a difference in that role? And I actually ask the person the question, how will I measure your success? How will I know when you are succeeding in that position? What is it that you believe that you're going to be able to do for me that's going to add value to the position that we have on offer? So I'm extremely direct, because I think you're right. It's a difficult thing to make a decision. So what I want is not woolly answers, but I need specifics that I can really hang my hat on. The one thing I find in today, it's amazing that so many people still don't take references. And because of the fact you're trying to make a decision in a short period of time, I'm just amazed at why people just don't pick up the phone and take it. And when I take a reference, I spend on average half an hour on the phone with the person I'm taking a reference from, because that person's worked with this candidate for years. So it's not, did he work there for 5 years and do you think he's great? Yeah. Would you rehire him? I want to know, tell me about the individual. I tell them about the job they're applying for and actually ask them the question, if you were me, would you hire them for that job? Yeah. What were the things that person did that irritated you? So I'm really specific on the questions, because I need to understand what is it about this individual that's going to make a difference.
I was talking to a FTSE 100 chief executive many years ago, bemoaning the fact that I'd appointed somebody that hadn't worked out. And he said to me, and I've always remembered this, he said, well, if you get 1 in 3 right, you're doing well. And I thought, is that really the case? Is that really what I should be aiming for, a 33% success rate?
I mean, that's very expensive, because, the cost when it goes wrong in this market today is very, very expensive. I mean, for example, I don't make a decision in half an hour. Typically for me, you can have between 5 and 7 interviews. I very often want somebody to come and spend a day in the business, because I think when you get them to come and spend a day, the gloves are off a bit, they're not selling, it's not an interview situation, and you see somebody in the working environment, because I'm not in a hurry to make a mistake. And if it takes me longer, I'm okay with that, because I'm so paranoid at what happens when it goes wrong that I invest a lot more time up front before I make that decision.
Well, I'm interviewing 6 people in the next 2 days, so
wow.
I'm going to learn a few lessons from what you've just said there. James Caan is with us. He's written a book called Start Your Business in 7 Days. It's published by Penguin in paperback at $12.99. This is LBC 97.3. It's 9:46, and in the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre, here's Paul Murphy. You're listening to the LBC 97.3 Book Club. James Caan is with me to talk about his book, Start Your Business in 7 Days. We have to talk about Dragon's Den, because a lot of people will know you through Dragon's Den. You were on the programme for 3 years. What was your best investment on the show, and what was the one that you got most fun out of?
I must admit, I did love the dog treadmill. I know it's a ridiculous idea, and people think, God, it's not about fat dogs out there, but I thought it was a great concept, and I really enjoyed working with the entrepreneur on that. I thought Wrap Strap was a really fun concept, which was that kind of a bit like the cable tie. which a normal cable tie you can only tie once. Wrap strap, you can tie the same cable tie 5 times over, which I think was a great idea, great concept. The one that probably financially made the most money was something called Chockbox, where, if you have an electrical wire that snaps, it's a way where you put a connector in and you put it inside a box that's fire resistant. And literally within a week of coming off the show, we got an order for 1 million units. From a company in Germany. I mean, it just flew out the window. So that was probably financially the most fun in terms of an investment.
And how competitive is it between the dragons that are sitting there? I mean,
oh my God, competitive!
There always seemed to be a bit of a frisson between you and Theo.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is, the minute somebody walks through the door with a great idea, I mean, we all get it immediately. And, then it's about, mind games to see, I wonder whether Theo's going to put an offer in first. Where will he pitch it? Will he come in at 30% equity or 40% equity? So, it's incredibly competitive because, I want that investment as well as he does. And what you find in the den is the minute 2 people make an investment, it's not about the money then, it's about which dragon will the entrepreneur go for. So, I mean, it is a huge amount of fun when that happens.
Because it's always quite fun when the person who's doing their pitch, in the end, they make the choice as to who they might deign to deal with.
Isn't it amazing how the tables turn?
Absolutely. No. And what's the worst investment that or worst decision that you made?
I've got no real regrets because I think when I make a decision, I'm one of these people, I'm committed to the decision and I'll make it work. So I'm not somebody who really looks back and says, oh my God, why did I do that? I mean, I think I'm a mature adult. I know what I'm doing. I'm capable of making those decisions. I mean, I think the one decision that I think in the den that probably was the most interesting one was where you had somebody who came in. It was a married couple and she was quite sane and she looked like she was from planet Earth, spoke pretty good English. And she came into the den and said, Dragons, I've got this great idea because I think in Britain today, a lot of married couples have an issue because they don't get a good night's sleep. And that's because either the husband spends too much time on the wife's side of the bed or the wife spends too much time shimmying over to the husband's side of the bed. And I feel we've got a real solution for that. And then she kind of reveals this incredible idea and everybody's, in anticipation. And she's got this white bed sheet with a black line in the middle.
Oh my God.
I'm thinking, she cannot be serious. So of course you have to go and see because I want to know what is the significance of the back line. So I said, would you mind if I had a look? So I went and I'm kind of rubbing the cotton to see, does it explode? Does the line vibrate? Ian, literally, it was a felt line down the middle, and that was her idea. She wanted £100,000 for the concept. What a valuation.
For 2%.
Yes, clearly. and you can imagine, I said, and for those reasons, I'm out.
And were there many people you think actually came on just so they could get on TV? Because some of the ideas did seem to be a little bit bizarre. It's a bit like on X Factor. You can tell that they let some people on just because they are so lunatic that they will make good television.
I mean, I think definitely the BBC does have an element where they think he's just going to make great TV. I mean, I think that I don't know if you remember, the one that I love this guy, 77, old guy, East London guy, who invented the, it was like where you dry clothes. It was like a line, and he'd put like a motor on it, so the line just kind of went round. I mean, it was ridiculous because it cost nearly £100, and the one without the motor cost like 10 quid. So I'm thinking, why would anybody buy it? But he was such a lovely guy, and he made amazing TV. So I think there's an element of it. It's an entertainment show.
Do you miss it?
I love it. I really, really did love it. I mean, there's no question. I think it was probably one of the best parts of my life. I think, just in terms of the experience of doing it, I think was amazing.
And was it your decision to leave? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to go?
At the time when I made that decision, I had 37 businesses that I was running. And I just felt by doing another series meant I'd probably do another 5 deals. I kind of felt like I'd become a bit of a deal junkie. I was kind of doing deals because I was on the show. Yeah. But then the reality creeps in because, you have to work with these businesses. You've got to work with these entrepreneurs. They take up a huge amount of your time. And I just felt guilty that I wasn't spending enough time with the ones that I had. and to do another series and do another 5 deals where you're probably going to disappoint another 5 entrepreneurs, I just thought it wasn't the right thing to do.
What do you make of your successor, Hilary Devey?
I think Hillary actually has gone down really well. I think, certainly, the feedback that I'm getting, people really like her. Yeah. I think initially, it was quite difficult because, having 2 women on the show is something that's never happened before. But certainly from everything I've seen, I think she's done really well.
Well, she's coming on the programme in a few weeks' time.
Oh, fantastic.
I have to say, I'm rather looking forward to that. Now, you do a lot of charity work in Pakistan. Tell me a little bit about that.
I don't specifically do work in Pakistan. It's just simply that, if I come across situations that just emotionally touch you, I think when I saw the floods that happened recently on BBC, and I saw that kind of 20 million people had kind of lost their lives and lost their entire livelihoods, I suppose like a lot of people, I just wanted to go and see for myself what had really happened. And when I arrived and I just saw these individual villages that had been completely wiped away, where people had virtually lost everything, I just felt the need to wanted to do something. And so I took the responsibility of identifying a village, and I ended up having to rebuild the entire village, the roads, the schools, the houses, the water, the sanitation, the electricity, and try and restore life back into that community, because there is no insurance, there is no welfare there. Those people are reliant on kind of foundations or charities, and I'd set up a foundation where I wanted to make a difference or give something back. And when I come across a cause that I personally feel, that is worthy of that, and I think as an entrepreneur, if you are in a position where you've done well, I think social responsibility, is the fabric of the way we are in Britain. I think Britain is one of the most charitable countries in the world, and I think if you grow up here, I do think you feel the need, to be a responsible citizen. And I think whatever you can do as an individual, which makes a difference, I think it is important. I think it's something we should encourage, and I think Britain should be proud of the culture that we've created here.
Just finally, do you think this government gets business? Do you think any government gets business? I
think this particular government, I absolutely believe, gets business. I've seen more initiatives coming out of this government than I've seen in any other government.
Is that a good thing, though, necessarily?
Well, I think they are really trying hard to stimulate business, to encourage business, to deregulate, to improve taxation, to introduce funding. Because I see it firsthand. So certainly from my experience, I would say they are genuinely doing a very good job. I think credit to Cameron and certainly, George Osborne. Is
there one thing that you wish they were doing but they're not?
I think right now, to me, encouraging entrepreneurship and business should be the key on their agenda, because businesses are the job creators, and they need to understand that, because right now jobs is their biggest challenge, is their biggest issue, and I just don't think they're doing enough for businesses to encourage SMEs to hire more people.
Well, James Caan, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope people will buy your book, particularly those who've got a bit of entrepreneurial spirit. It's called Start Your Business in 7 Days. It's published by Portfolio Penguin in paperback at $12.99. This is LBC 97.3.